In a world where every single comfort, every single pleasure, and every piece of information is instantly available to us, why are so many of us feeling more anxious, more overwhelmed, and paradoxically, less satisfied? Is our greatest challenge today truly not one of scarcity, but one of overwhelming surplus? Welcome to Book Bites. This is the show where we take a thoughtful look at a significant new book every week to help you improve your English and gain some profound insights into life and the world around us. This is episode 2 from our current series, and today we are looking at the fascinating concepts presented in Dopamine Nation by Anna Lembke.
That's right. And our mission for this discussion is to really unpack the core science behind how our brains respond to this modern flood of stimulation. We'll explore that surprising paradox, how the constant chase for comfort is actually leading to deep dissatisfaction. And most importantly, we'll examine the practical ways the book suggests we can reset our neural pathways for, a deeper, more sustainable sense of well-being.
And just a quick reminder for you, our listener. We know this material is dense and packed with great ideas. To help you really cement your understanding of everything we discussed today, you can download a free worksheet that goes along with this episode. You'll find it linked in the description box right below. It's a really powerful tool to reinforce the knowledge.
So let's begin then. Let's lay the foundation by trying to understand this new reality of abundance and the true role of the molecule that's driving all this seeking behavior.
Okay, so let's unpack this modern dilemma. Sure. The book starts by immediately setting up this stark historical contrast. For millennia, the human experience was defined by having too little.
Right. Effort was required for literally everything.
Everything. Finding safe water, securing food, creating shelter. That era demanded, persistence, patience, and just a huge amount of physical output.
And this is exactly why the book positions the modern crossroads as so challenging. I mean, we are biologically and psychologically equipped for a world of scarcity, yet we find ourselves in an age of staggering material and digital abundance. The sheer scale of easily accessible stimulation is, well, it's completely unprecedented in human history.
Just think about the definition of luxury a century ago. It might have meant having access to a single piece of fresh fruit out of season. Today, we have endless digital entertainment, food engineered for maximum flavor available 24/7, and shopping that can deliver anything you desire within hours. The central challenge of our time, as the book puts it, is the management of surplus, not scarcity.
And that management difficulty, it stems from the fact that our environment is just saturated with these easily accessible stimuli. They completely bypass the natural breaks our system once had.
What do you mean by natural breaks?
Well, when survival required walking for miles to find food, that walk was a natural friction point. It took time, it took energy. Now all that friction is gone. It's just a simple swipe or a tap.
And what does that mean for our internal lives? The book pushes for some powerful self-reflection here. It asks you, the listener, to think. How often do you reflexively reach for stimulation? The phone, a snack, the next click. Not because you actively desire it, but simply to fill a quiet moment or preempt a flicker of boredom.
That reflex, that is the sign that our ancient systems have been hijacked by modern convenience.
To understand that reflex, then, we have to really get to grips with the role of dopamine. We so often hear it described in popular culture as the pleasure molecule, but the book argues that definition is incomplete and, frankly, pretty misleading.
It really is. It misses the main point entirely.
So if it's not the pleasure molecule, what is its primary directive? What does it actually do?
Dopamine is fundamentally the motivation and anticipation molecule. Its primary role is to drive us forward, to motivate seeking and consumption. And here's the crucial distinction. The highest concentration of dopamine is released not when we experience the reward, but in the moments leading up to it, when we anticipate it.
That distinction changes everything. It means the powerful chemical rush occurs when we see the notification icon lighting up, or while we're loading the next episode, or placing the online order.
Yes. It's the promise, the potential that triggers the seeking behavior.
I see. It's the looking forward to it, not the having it.
Precisely. That surge of dopamine motivated our ancestors to exert the effort needed to secure a meal or find warmth. It spurred action towards necessary life-sustaining goals, and it demanded patience and physical output.
But now, in our contemporary environment, that same intense ancient mechanism is being activated constantly by these engineered stimuli that merely mimic those signals of essential reward. They aren't necessary for survival, but they are exquisitely designed to activate that same seeking pathway.
And the consequence of that is our brains now exist in a state of nearly constant low-grade dopamine stimulation. We've effectively eliminated the necessary periods of biological and psychological quiet. Our internal systems are always on, always ready for the next micro-reward.
And the smartphone, as the book highlights, is the ultimate manifestation of this problem. It's not just a tool. It's a perfectly optimized portal to an infinite universe of potential dopamine hits, instantly accessible in our pockets, demanding zero physical effort and maximum psychological engagement.
And when we rely on these micro-rewards reflexively, when we use them to escape minor boredom or manage trivial stresses or simply fill a pause, the behavior quickly shifts from a conscious choice to an automatic compulsion. That reliance is the foundational problem of what the book calls the Dopamine Nation.
So we've established that the problem is widespread and it's driven by anticipation. Now let's look at the sheer breadth of this issue. And if you're finding this analysis compelling, please do remember to share this content with your friends. More people can really benefit from understanding how our modern environment is shaping our behavior.
Let's transition into understanding just how wide this issue truly spreads, because it affects far more aspects of our lives than we might initially classify as a problem.
The book really challenges our traditional sort of narrow understanding of compulsion, doesn't it? When we hear the word addiction, our minds often default to severe substance dependency.
They do. But the book argues, and I think very convincingly, that the underlying neurobiological and psychological mechanisms are functionally the same for many of the pervasive behavioral compulsions that define our era.
So what's the definition it provides?
It expands the definition to be far more inclusive and relevant to modern life. It says, compulsion is repeated, automatic engagement in a behavior or use of a substance, despite clear evidence of harm. And that's harm to one's physical health, emotional well-being, relationships, or critical responsibilities. And it's coupled with a persistent, frustrating inability to consistently abstain.
Right, so the key indicators aren't necessarily the substance itself, but the resulting harm and that profound loss of conscious choice. The moment you feel controlled by a habit, even when you know it's undermining your life, you are operating within this spectrum.
And this spectrum is massive. While, yes, clinical addiction lies on one end, the middle ground is filled with what the book describes as compulsive overeaters, compulsive shoppers, or people who are functionally dependent on their devices for mood regulation. They may not meet a formal diagnostic criterion, but they still feel a fundamental loss of control over their time and attention.
We're talking about the person who sacrifices necessary sleep for endless streaming content. The individual whose compulsive online ordering causes genuine financial stress.
Or even the professional who can't tolerate 5 minutes of quiet thought without checking their email, inducing a sense of panic when they're disconnected.
All these behaviors, they share that common thread of internal conflict. The individual engages in the behavior. It provides only this transient relief, and afterwards they're often left with feelings of shame, regret, or secrecy.
Exactly. The behavior consumes time that should be spent on meaningful, purposeful activities, yet the cycle just continues because the individual feels powerless to stop. That loss of agency is the crucial harm indicator.
So now we have to talk about why. Why is this spectrum so populous in the 21st century? It's not just a failure of individual willpower.
Not at all. It's a systemic problem, and it's driven by two really powerful forces: hyper-accessibility and intentional engineering.
Let's start with accessibility.
Okay, accessibility first. The book highlights a simple rule. The easier, cheaper, and more socially accepted a dopamine-releasing stimulus is, the higher the risk of compulsive overuse. I mean, just look at the changes in the food supply. Hyperpalatable foods, engineered to hit maximum pleasure points with fat, sugar, and salt, are the cheapest and most readily available options globally.
They're everywhere. They're constantly advertised, and their consumption is normalized. Contrast this with the effort required to prepare a simple whole food meal, which is significantly higher. The friction favors the engineered reward.
And then there's the engineering factor, which, as you mentioned earlier, is really quite unsettling. Technology platforms are not benign tools. They are created by teams of behavioral scientists and engineers whose specific job is to maximize user engagement, which really just means maximizing the time you spend consuming their content.
They're using neurochemical principles against us. How do they do that specifically? I think this is a point worth dwelling on.
Well, they use a number of sophisticated techniques, but the most notable one is the variable reward schedule. This is the core mechanism of engagement. You don't know when the next reward will arrive, a like, an exciting piece of news, a witty comment. Because the reward is unpredictable, your brain's seeking pathway, the dopamine system, stays constantly activated in a high state of anticipation.
That is the same behavioral mechanism that makes a slot machine so compelling, isn't it? The intermittent reinforcement just keeps the seeking behavior going indefinitely. It ensures you remain tethered to the device, just waiting for the next payoff.
Exactly. This means that disengagement from a modern stimulus, whether it's a social feed or a video game, is no longer a simple matter of just putting down a book. It requires an intense, conscious effort of will, fighting against a current that has been specifically designed to pull you in and keep you there.
And if you're finding this discussion valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell. It helps you keep receiving valuable content like this, and it helps us reach more people.
And the cost of this pervasive overconsumption is staggering. Beyond the emotional toll of shame and isolation, the book explicitly links this environment to systemic societal issues. We see rampant lifestyle-related diseases, obesity, heart conditions, type 2 diabetes, all fueled by the overconsumption of these engineered foods.
And there's more. The constant digital connection often leads to a paradoxical state of profound social loneliness. We are hyper-connected to digital streams, yet starved of the deep, effortful, face-to-face social bonds that truly regulate our mood and provide lasting satisfaction. Sleep disorders are also epidemic, driven by late-night engagement and the cognitive arousal that prevents the brain from entering restorative rest.
It really seems like we're living in a society where the default state is imbalance and conscious effort is required just to find neutral ground.
It's a powerful and, frankly, a slightly scary thought. That brings us to the core science, the part that explains why this constant pleasure-seeking inevitably leads to pain and emptiness. Let's explore this idea of the neurochemical seesaw.
To truly understand why comfort leads to chronic discomfort, we have to grasp the brain's fundamental principle, its drive for stability, or what's known as homeostasis. The brain is obsessed with maintaining equilibrium. The book asserts that the systems for pleasure and pain are not separate, but are intricately linked, like two sides of the same coin.
And we can visualize this, as the book suggests, using the analogy of a neural seesaw, or a balanced scale. In its natural neutral state, the scale is level. This represents a balanced mood and nervous system.
Right. Now, when you introduce a potent pleasure stimulus, say a sugary rush, the intense affirmation of a like, or the high of an online purchase, you immediately drop a heavy weight onto the pleasure side of the scale. The scale tips instantly and dramatically.
What the brain does next is the critical insight, and I think it's the key to the entire book.
It is. Because the brain seeks homeostasis, it cannot tolerate being tipped for long, so it reflexively and automatically adds a compensatory counterweight to the pain side to level the scale. This counterweight is a surge of neural activity designed to restore equilibrium. And when the initial pleasure stimulus fades, that counterweight remains for a short period, causing the scale to momentarily tip toward the pain side before it slowly settles back to neutral.
I see. So even a momentary pleasure always involves a brief, small debt of discomfort immediately afterward.
Precisely. That small debt is the price of pleasure. However, the modern tragedy, as the book explores, is our cultural aversion to any discomfort. We have become so accustomed to instant gratification that we feel an urgent, almost panic need to medicate, distract, or escape the natural emotional states of boredom, solitude, sadness, or frustration.
So when that brief discomfort hits, that slight downswing after the sugar rush or the emptiness after the social media session, we immediately chase another hit of pleasure to retip the scale. We try to avoid the temporary pain entirely.
And that's the strategy that catastrophically backfires. If we chronically and repeatedly tip the scale toward pleasure, always avoiding the natural downswing, the brain's automatic compensatory pain response, that counterweight grows stronger, faster, and more persistent. It's like the brain recognizes this pattern and preemptively prepares a heavier and heavier counterweight each time.
This sounds exhausting for the brain. What are the consequences of this chronic counterweight accumulation?
Those neurological counterweights manifest as chronic, low-grade suffering. It's not necessarily acute agony, but a generalized anxiety, a persistent irritability, a feeling of vague emptiness, or the classic symptom, anhedonia.
Anhedonia is the growing inability to feel genuine pleasure from normal, everyday, low dopamine activities like a conversation, reading a book, or just quiet reflection. So this means our baseline for normal happiness has shifted. We now require this massive stimulation, a huge, pleasure weight, just to feel momentarily level or simply okay.
Hmm.
And the normal flow of life, with its mandatory patience and mild frustrations, now registers as intolerable suffering. That's the core paradox. Unprecedented comfort leading to paralyzing anxiety.
And the mechanism driving this is called neuroadaptation. When we constantly flood the system with external dopamine hits, the brain attempts to protect itself. It begins to reduce the number of dopamine receptors available, a process called downregulation. You can think of it as the brain closing down some of the parking spots for dopamine.
So if I have fewer parking spots for dopamine, I need a much bigger dose of the drug or the stimulus just to fill the few spots I have left and feel the same effect. It's
Yeah,
tolerance, right?
exactly. Tolerance requires more stimulus for less effect. And simultaneously, the brain also releases stress-related neurotransmitters like dynorphin. Dynorphin is a natural anti-opioid that creates dysphoric, uncomfortable, and anxious feelings. It is part of that pain counterweight, actively pushing the scale toward discomfort.
This makes the cycle just devastatingly self-perpetuating. The behavior starts being motivated less by the genuine pursuit of enjoyment and more by the desperate, urgent need to quiet the growing discomfort of withdrawal. It's just trying to get rid of the persistent dynorphin and the shift toward the pain side of the seesaw.
The individual is no longer chasing pleasure. They are simply trying to escape the pain created by the last pleasurable act. This explains why people continue compulsively checking feeds or consuming certain foods long after the enjoyment has ceased. They're just trying to lift that immense weight on the pain side of the scale, trying to get back to a neutral baseline that keeps slipping further and further away.
And if this continues, we enter the ultimate state the book warns about, the dopamine deficit. The scale is now permanently tipped toward the pain side, even when you're unstimulated. Life feels flat, muted, and gray. The compulsive behavior offers only momentary, temporary relief, but structurally, it reinforces the long-term deficit.
Understanding this neurochemistry is just so vital because it removes the moral judgment that's often associated with compulsion. This isn't a moral failing, it's a neurochemical adaptation to an environment of overwhelming surplus. It's an overreaction by a system that's trying desperately to protect its stability.
That is truly fascinating. We've established the problem and the mechanism. If you are learning a lot from this exploration of the brain, we'd love for you to comment below and share what habit or concept discussed so far you find most challenging in this modern landscape of abundance.
But the hopeful message in all of this is that the brain's adaptability, its neuroplasticity, means the state is reversible. We just have to provide the environment necessary for healing. Let's look at the tools for recalibration.
So if the problem is chronic overstimulation leading to receptor burnout, the solution must involve a period of strategic understimulation. The book champions abstinence, not as a moralistic punishment or a permanent restriction, but as a temporary therapeutic strategy, a much-needed reset.
That reframing is absolutely essential. Strategic abstinence is a planned period of deliberately going without a specific compulsive stimulus to allow those overworked reward pathways to rest, to heal, and, most importantly, to restore their natural receptor sensitivity. The whole goal is the reintroduction of conscious choice.
This pause is crucial because it breaks that automatic loop. It forces you to sit with the minor discomforts, the urges, and the cravings, and allows them to rise and fall without being instantly medicated or distracted. This creates vital space for self-observation.
We need to give the brain's homeostatic mechanisms time to work without our interference. And the clinical observations detailed in the book provide a pretty clear benchmark for success. While benefits may begin immediately, the book cites approximately 4 weeks or 30 days as a common milestone. This duration is generally necessary for significant neurochemical and psychological shifts to become evident. It allows dopamine receptor sensitivity to restore and the baseline mood to stabilize noticeably.
So that 4-week period is enough time for the brain to start cleaning house, so to speak,
Yeah.
building new parking spots for dopamine and reducing those chronic dynorphin levels.
It is. And crucially, this period of abstinence serves a powerful diagnostic function. When you temporarily remove your primary coping mechanism, the thing you use to numb or distract yourself, the underlying emotional or psychological issues that fuel the behavior come into sharp focus.
For instance, a temporary digital fast might reveal profound feelings of social inadequacy, or maybe an unaddressed professional goal. The acute anxiety or restlessness felt during the fast isn't a sign of failure. It's the brain pointing you toward the true root cause that needs to be addressed, rather than just superficially distracted from.
Implementing this requires clear boundaries. You have to start with a single, well-defined behavior, I will not engage in online shopping for 30 days, or no hyperpalatable processed food for 4 weeks. And you must prepare mentally for the withdrawal symptoms, the irritability, the sleep disruption, the boredom. Recognizing these feelings as positive, temporary signs of neurochemical healing is critical for pushing through the discomfort.
We must emphasize a crucial safety point here, drawn from the book. While self-directed resets are highly appropriate for many behavioral habits like screen time, social media, or mild food habits, any severe physiological dependencies, especially those involving specific substances, require careful medical consultation and supervision. The focus here is on behavioral recalibration for the overconsumed modern stimulus. Now let's look at the second major tool for recalibration, which involves leaning into discomfort. And if you're enjoying this deep exploration, please don't forget to like this content. It really helps us out.
This is perhaps the most counterintuitive and transformative concept in the entire book, the power of voluntary discomfort. This principle is scientifically rooted in the concept of hormesis.
Hormesis, that's the idea that exposure to a low-dose stressor triggers a beneficial adaptive response, right?
Exactly. It's the physiological and psychological equivalent of strength training. By intentionally submitting ourselves to controlled, acute stress, we initiate a cascade of adaptations that build resilience. The brain perceives this as a manageable challenge, a signal to grow stronger, not a destructive attack that it needs to avoid.
So how does choosing pain actually improve our pleasure-pain seesaw balance?
By engaging the seesaw from the strength side, the acute stress, the pain of intense physical effort, the cold, or the mental strain of concentration causes a temporary negative tip. But this tip is immediately followed by a massive, sustained compensatory surge of the body's natural rewards, endorphins, and a sustained elevation of mood regulators like dopamine and serotonin.
And the key differentiating factor from the impulsive-compulsive hit is that this feeling of satisfaction is earned.
Yes, that's the word. It's an integral part of a holistic adaptive process. It is not followed by a crash or a craving or a debilitating withdrawal. Instead, it leads to a prolonged sense of stress tolerance, immense self-efficacy, and a positive, stable mood shift.
Let's ground this in specific practices. We know vigorous physical exercise is the classic example. Acute stress leading to cardiovascular and muscular adaptation, coupled with improved mood regulation.
But the book expands this far beyond the gym. Consider cold exposure, like brief cold showers. This acute stress triggers massive sympathetic nervous system activation, followed by an anti-inflammatory and mood-regulating response.
Or deliberate fasting, like intermittent fasting. This introduces a manageable stress of temporary energy scarcity.
Right.
The body adapts by improving metabolic health, but more importantly, the mental discipline required strengthens willpower and reshapes one's deeply ingrained compulsive relationship with food availability.
And we must emphasize that voluntary discomfort doesn't have to be physical. It can be psychological. Tackling a complex, mentally exhausting project without interruption, delaying a simple gratification for a set period, or proactively seeking out a difficult but necessary conversation. Each time we meet these challenges, instead of avoiding them, we teach our brain a fundamental lesson. Anxiety is survivable, discipline yields sustainable reward, and true growth lies on the other side of fear.
By systematically incorporating these hormetic practices, we fundamentally retrain our nervous system. We teach it that discomfort is not an emergency signal demanding immediate escape, but a necessary precursor to adaptation and genuine capability. This dramatically raises our overall threshold for stress, making the inevitable small setbacks of daily life feel manageable rather than overwhelming.
And this return to tolerance is what allows us to re-experience genuine joy. When pleasure is earned through effort and contrast, the moments of true relaxation, connection, and satisfaction become exponentially more vivid and appreciated.
And please remember to download the free worksheet in the description box below. It will really help you reinforce these powerful ideas and continue to gain profound insights into this topic. The journey back to balance is not purely chemical or physiological. It is deeply moral and interpersonal. The book notes that compulsive behaviors thrive in the dark corners of secrecy and denial. This creates immense cognitive dissonance, that gap between who we are, our values, and what we are actually doing, our actions.
That internal conflict, that voice that says, I know this is wrong, but I can't stop, is profoundly stressful. And our natural response to silence that stress is denial, minimizing the harm, or isolating ourselves. These defenses only reinforce the compulsive cycle.
Therefore, the process of healing must begin with radical honesty. First, that means ruthless self-honesty. conducting a clear internal audit of the behavior without minimizing or making excuses. The hard questions have to be asked. How is this single habit actively harming my responsibilities, my health, or the quality of my relationships? What profound emotional discomfort am I successfully avoiding by reaching for this immediate distraction?
This internal audit is the essential first step. It organizes the chaos. But the book stresses that genuine transformation requires the next step, external honesty. That means vulnerably sharing that clear-eyed assessment with a trusted mentor, an accountability partner, or a supportive community.
The power of external honesty is that it shatters the intense isolation that fuels compulsive behavior. Secrets make us feel uniquely flawed, like we are the only ones struggling. Speaking those secrets aloud transfers the immense burden from the hidden, shadowy parts of our mind into the light of a compassionate, non-judgmental relationship. This immediately reveals our struggles to be part of the shared human condition.
And furthermore, the simple act of verbalizing our reality engages our higher brain functions, specifically the prefrontal cortex, the logical organizing part of the brain. Articulating the truth helps us organize chaotic emotions and diffuse the overwhelming power of the impulse. The impulses lose their magic when they are spoken into existence.
And crucially, this is where accountability is forged. It is just too easy to break promises we only make to ourselves. When we share our commitment to change with a caring witness, we introduce positive external pressure. This witness isn't there for surveillance, but to gently remind us of our stated goals when we falter and to celebrate our progress when we succeed.
And this process is the bedrock of authentic intimacy. We often mistakenly fear that revealing our flaws will lead to rejection, but in a genuinely supportive context, the opposite occurs. Vulnerability signals trust and deepens the connection, creating a powerful antidote to the profound loneliness that often initiates overconsumption in the first place.
The book makes a brilliant functional distinction here between two types of negative emotional experiences, harmful shame and helpful guilt. We must first deal with what it calls toxic shame.
Toxic shame is devastating because it is global and identity-based. It attacks the core self, whispering, "You are a bad, flawed, and unworthy person." Because the person feels fundamentally broken, they retreat into isolation and numbing behaviors, reinforcing the cycle. This type of shame must be entirely dissolved through acceptance and empathy within a community.
And you contrast this with what the book defines as pro-social shame or guilt. This feeling is specific, it's behavior-based, and it's forward-looking. It says, I did something that did not align with my values, and I need to correct it and make amends.
This is the feeling that operates as our moral compass. It motivates sincere apology, the repair of relationships, and concrete positive change. Healthy communities, as the book describes them, must cultivate an environment where toxic shame is dissolved through unconditional acceptance, while simultaneously fostering pro-social shame through genuine accountability.
So when an individual is honest about a transgression, a relapse into an old habit, a broken promise, within a supportive group, the response should not be condemnation. Instead, it should be a collective, pragmatic question. What can we learn from this moment? How can we make it right? And what support do you need to ensure the next step aligns with your values?
This process requires and builds humility, the realistic understanding of one's limitations, one's history of struggle, and one's capacity for harm. Humility is the direct antidote to the denial and grandiosity that often accompany deep-seated compulsive behaviors.
So pro-social shame, when experienced within a supportive, honest community, becomes a profound tool for growth. It grounds us in reality, guides us toward necessary repair, and reconnects us to others through shared empathy. Through this radical honesty and accountability, we move toward rebuilding integrity, ensuring our actions consistently align with our stated values and long-term goals.
And if you feel this discussion is enlightening and beneficial, please take a moment to share it with your friends and family so they can also benefit from these insights.
This has been a tremendously insightful exploration of the modern challenge presented in Dopamine Nation. We have traversed the landscape of overwhelming abundance, diagnosed the fundamental neurochemical paradox of comfort, established the necessity of a reset period, and finally looked at the tools for building lasting resilience through voluntary challenge and unwavering personal integrity.
And the overarching message is clear. The goal is not self-deprivation, but conscious intention. The book synthesizes all these insights into a highly actionable, practical framework, a series of steps that move us from being reactive to being proactive in pursuit of sustainable well-being.
Let's quickly detail that framework the book offers. It's a clear map for our listeners to take away and implement immediately.
Okay. This framework for intentional living involves 7 key steps designed to reclaim balance. First, conduct a periodic audit of inputs. Regularly, non-judgmentally, take stock of everything you consume: information, food, entertainment, and substances. Ask yourself honestly, is this consistently nourishing or depleting my energy, my attention, and my time? Second, rehabilitate your tolerance for discomfort. Start with small, manageable acts of patience. Practice sitting with minor restlessness, wait 5 minutes before checking your phone after notification, or complete a mundane task without the distraction of background noise. This is strength training for your nervous system. Third, implement strategic resets. For habits that feel overwhelming, plan a temporary, time-limited period of abstinence, often 30 days. Use this reset not as a punishment, but as a deliberate experiment in self-discovery and neurochemical recalibration. Fourth, incorporate voluntary challenge, hormesis. Integrate controlled, acute stress into your regular routine. This means regular, vigorous physical exercise, engaging in cold exposure, or tackling complex projects that require intense mental focus. These practices build biological and psychological resilience that lasts. Fifth, cultivate a culture of honesty. Practice ruthless self-honesty, admitting your struggles to yourself first. Then, share your commitments and failures with trusted people to foster external accountability and shatter the powerful influence of isolation and secrecy. Sixth, adopt the long-term perspective. Whenever an immediate urge or impulse strikes, introduce the deliberate pause. Ask the later questions. Will this immediate choice contribute to the life I want to be living a year from now? Train yourself to subordinate transient impulses to your overarching values. And seventh, redefine reward. Actively seek out and cultivate sources of pleasure that are slow, effortful, and meaningful. This includes deep focus on creative or complex work, investing time and vulnerability in face-to-face relationships, mastering a difficult skill, or engaging with the natural world. These offer a slower burning, far more stable, and sustaining satisfaction.
And here is the final hopeful provocation. The book's ultimate message is firmly rooted in the science of neuroplasticity. Our brains are not static entities, permanently fixed in cycles of compulsive behavior. They are constantly being shaped, literally restructured, by the choices we make today, right now.
By choosing to change our behaviors, by intentionally embracing voluntary discomfort and strategic pauses, we quite literally reshape our neural circuitry. The cycles of overconsumption and the resulting deficit can be broken. The capacity for authentic joy, genuine peace, and sustained contentment can absolutely be reclaimed.
The goal, ultimately, is to shift our identity. It is to move from being a passive passenger in your life, carried away by every transient impulse offered by the environment, to becoming its skilled, conscious, and balanced navigator. We encourage you to share your thoughts on this entire discussion. Perhaps share the one step from the framework you plan to implement this week by leaving a comment below.
If you found this discussion useful, please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another Book Bites.
And finally, don't forget that free worksheet is waiting for you in the description box. It is the perfect tool to solidify these powerful concepts.
Thank you for joining us on this deep exploration of Dopamine Nation. We wish you a peaceful and well-balanced week ahead.